Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the Political Brown Kid here. And what I want to talk to you today about is science and why I don't 100% prescribe to science. I probably prescribe to science maybe 60%. I'll give it a 60% weight of correctness. And the reason being is because if you take the philosophical approach, which would say science is created by man, man is not perfect, therefore science cannot be perfect. And that's the big problem with a lot of people in today's society. A lot of times you'll find particularly a lot of intellectually vulnerable, I won't call them any derogatory names, I'll just call them intellectually vulnerable. You'll find the intellectually vulnerable people of society, they'll see somebody on television, and just because that person has a few acronyms behind their name, particularly PhD or MD or whatever other acronyms they want to have, that shows that they've been to some higher learning or through some institution and got quote unquote accredited by a particular governing body, that because this individual is spouting off facts and referencing some book and referencing science, and that's what they always say, it's the science shows, and that's how they dupe individuals into believing that what they're saying is correct, because they'll say the science proves. And we can even point back to the time of COVID. And I know a lot of people COVID really divided a lot of people. And, we're finding out a lot of things that were not factual when you look at how they kind of forced a lot of individuals to get shots. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate whether shots were, whether you should get the shot or whether you shouldn't get the shot, because I know that is a subject of contention for a lot of people. But everything is just a science reference, and it's supposed to be true because science said so. And the problem I had with that is this. I remember being in grade school, and during science class, I probably got a B in science, maybe even a C, probably B. I think when I was young, I was probably a B student because science wasn't that hard when you're in elementary school. But I probably could have had an A if I knew all of the correct planets. I had to remember that Pluto was a planet back when I was young. Well, what are the 9 planets? And having to remember that one additional planet probably made me forget the name of another planet. If I only had to remember 8, I probably would have got straight A's in science. I don't know. But first, Pluto's a planet. Now science says it's not a planet. But science was right back in the 1970s when they said it was a planet. So it was right for that particular moment in time because somebody said it was right. You look at Galileo. I do believe his name was Galileo. I'm not a historian, so you're going to have to do your own digging on this one. I think his name was Galileo. Galileo told all the other scientists, hey, look, I don't believe that this earth is flat. I think that this earth is round. I just got a feeling. And I think he wound up in jail over it. They're about to kill this dude over that. This is not something that I make up. Galileo almost went to jail over going against science and saying that the earth was round and not flat. You look at the doctors of the 1950s, I think it was the 1950s. All of them are in the hospital room in front of some poor patient telling this patient that they're about to die because they have cancer. And the doctor has a cigarette in his hand, smoking, literally smoking in the hospital room. And the patient wonders why they caught lung cancer. Because I've been coming to your doctor's office every a couple of times a year for checkups and stuff, and I'm inhaling all of this damn cigarette smoke. They'll tell you eggs are bad for you, they'll give you high cholesterol, then they'll tell you eggs are great for you because it's a great source of protein. Make your mind up. They don't know. Scientists, quote unquote scientists don't know. They're not the smartest people in the room. And they project or proclaim to be. But because it's based on science, you're supposed to go along with it as fact. So that's why I just want you to kind of question what you're learning and what these people are telling you. You have to use your own common sense and use your own real world experience, because that's also to what science is based off of: observation. These people are not smarter than you. They just act like they're smarter than you. Some poor kid from the inner city, if he tries to write a book on why crack ruined communities, he's not going to get a book deal. You know why? Because he doesn't have any PhDs or any other letters behind his name. The same thing with a woman of the night, should I say? That's in the oldest profession, right? She's in the oldest she provides her services, for a short time or a good time, not a long time. If she tries to write a book on the subject of why men stray, cheat, whatever you want to call it, if she tries to write a book on pleasing men and why men cheat and so forth, she's not going to get a book there. You know why? Because of her profession, her lack of education, and because she doesn't have certifications or she doesn't have the science behind her. What are your statistics? What is the science? The same thing with the drug dealer. What is your statistics? What's the science telling you? And then as soon as some PhD who's never been in the hood or never been through a crack epidemic comes along and just throws a microphone in front of a few people's faces and he goes into some statistics book, he's going to get a book deal and sell millions of copies of his book, be plastered all over television as an authoritative source on crack cocaine. And the same thing is true of Dr. Ruth, the older lady. Most people don't remember her. If you younger people won't remember her, but as older people do, Dr. Ruth was on television talking every night about, the human pleasures and how to please people. And I'm not trying to, but it's like, well, how did you become a professor? What makes your version right and this other lady right here wrong? The thing is, they have the science behind them. And not only do they have the science behind them, in order to get that science behind them, they got the education behind them. And that qualifies them. And in my book, it doesn't qualify them at all. So once again, this is a Political Brown Kid. Challenge what you're hearing. Challenge science. Don't take it as a grain of salt, because when people start throwing statistics and numbers at you, 9 times out of 10, those numbers are misleading. Give you another example before I leave out of here. Before I check out of here, here's another example. They'll tell you that women live longer than men on average. And they'll say women have a longer lifespan than men. If somebody and they'll say, well, the science and the statistics will show you that women live to be this age, men live to be this age. Well, why is that? They don't give you the history. If you don't have the context behind those numbers, you don't understand this point, that men have a higher self-deletion rate. Well, then you have to dig into why the men self-deleting. You have to dig into that. Then you have to factor in, too, that men are involved in more, should I say, violent or illegal, illicit activities, such as you look at mobsters, you look at gangsters, you look at all of this stuff. So those numbers contribute to it. Then you look at, definitely when you go back to World War I, World War II, and you go back to the Vietnam period, all of those guys that fought in those wars were men primarily. Maybe there were a few women in there, but the majority, 99+% of those people were men dying in those wars. And today, too, on the front lines, dying in the wars. When you start looking at those numbers, then and you start factoring in that information, and if you just start saying, okay, let me compare apples to apples. Let's look at let's look at the men that aren't participating in those particular lifestyles. They're living, blue collar or just regular lifestyles, blue collar, white collar lifestyles. They go to work, they do what they have to do, and they're not involved in any of that. And if you start comparing those individuals, males, to women, then you're going to get a more accurate reflection. And then you compare the women that aren't involved in those activities as well. You have to compare apples to apples, but when somebody just starts throwing numbers out there at you, all numbers are going to be misleading. And you can take that example and extrapolate that and apply it to other things. Why are blacks less successful than the other groups? Why are this and why are that? And all of these numbers are why are women, less than this. And, when people always try to use numbers to make you feel bad, and then they start throwing out, well, it's the science. I got these statistics from here, and it's the science, and it's the science. You have to look into those numbers, and you have to do your own research. So once again, this is the Political Brown Kid telling you to trust yourself, And don't trust science 100% because you and your eyes know better, and even what you see and what you understand. And so trust in your own self, and also do extra research too, because you can't just go off of your small population or sample size. You have to go out there, do your own research, but come to your own conclusions. And if it sounds right, and use Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is probably always going to be your best one. And just kind of always do your own research and due diligence. So once again, this is the Political Brown Kid. I'm out of here.